Lace 'em up, let's start the show. We're digging in with Trip. 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 We're digging in with Trip today, yeah.
Well, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Why did I come out the door? Because the guy we're about to dig in with momentarily, wow, so underrated in the way when it mattered most, fighting through adversity, the ups and the downs, the way he shut the door. He always found a way to shut the door. And that's Chris Osgood. 3 Stanley Cups, 2 as a starter, just about had a 4th where he surely would have been the Conn Smythe playoff MVP trophy winner. What a storyteller. And we're going to get to the world of Oz and get behind his magic curtain momentarily. So much magic down the road here at Joe Louis Arena. His 2 cups as a starter, he did win on the road. He got it done in any venue. Speaking of down there in downtown Detroit, I remind you, this beautiful hoodie, at least I hope you think it's beautiful, diggintrip.com. Half of the sales in our merchandise through New Year's Eve. So coming right up, go to the Pope Francis Center right down the road. People who need it absolutely the most. Before we dig in a couple of things, I want to remind you and encourage you to get involved with your communication, rate and review our podcast on all audio and video platforms. Ask any questions. Be constructive about how you think we can be better and more appealing to you. Before we get to my dear friend Ozzie, Ozzie for me, we were already friends before we even knew it because he got drafted in 91. And I remember I went late when everybody went to bed in the 93 draft. But he gave all small goaltenders hope that they could make it. So he played big, and he has tremendous mental toughness. Speaking of toughness on all fronts, our presenting sponsor for digging in this very special episode is Allstate Fastener. They can deliver anywhere. I mean, you want the truth? They can handle any fastener delivery. Wasn't Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men in Cuba? They could deliver to Cuba, Antarctica. Global sourcing, that's second to none. Vendor managed inventory. They bring it right to the line if you need it. AllStateFastener.com, family owned, family run, since the 60s. So thank you to Allstate for presenting Ozzie. And we're going to head out to sit down with Chris Osgood. And I'm going to put on my Stars and Stripes trucker because we're going to slide out to the Rolston Hockey Academy. Huge tip of the USA cap to a USA Hockey Hall of Famer. He was my teammate, well, I was his, for the majority of our youth hockey years and junior before he went off to win a national championship at Lake Superior State, shine for the United States and World Junior, Olympic, any international and all international competitions, won a Stanley Cup with the New Jersey Devils, and now he is giving his all to developing future U.S. college standouts, major junior standouts, U.S. World Junior and Olympic hopefuls and future stars, and NHL stars to boot. The Rolston Hockey Academy, my dear friend, U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer, Brian Raleigh Rolston. So now we go to Raleigh's joint, and we dig in with a guy that I sure hope at some point, deservedly so, punches his ticket to the Hall of Fame. Chris Osgood.
Well, Ozzie, I start every show. It's great to have you, and we're going to get into it. I knew you before I didn't know you because I remember when you were drafted in Buffalo. But as we start every show, I ask you, how does Chris Osgood define digging in?
Digging in? Just never giving up no matter what the circumstances are. Just bearing down when it means most and just keeping at it no matter what. From when you're a young kid to when you're in your last year in the National Hockey League. And you hear guys talk, and I think digging in is saying, I'm going to keep playing until they tell me I can't anymore. I'm not giving up one bit.
You're setting the tone.
You're setting the tone.
You're setting the tone. It was actually this arena here. We're filming at our mutual friend Brian Rolston's hockey academy, and I was playing here in Oak Park. I remember this Westerner gets drafted in 1991, 54th overall, and I looked at, what were you listed then? 5'10", what?
150.
Okay.
I could bench press that weight once.
Yeah.
First year training camp.
So I said, and I thought the name was a cool name, and I said, well, as a guy that's still waiting for a growth spurt in myself, I said, okay, this gives me hope. It's going to the Detroit Red Wings, Chris Osgood. And so I knew you before I didn't even know you. What do you remember about that draft?
Just being nervous. I for some reason, I don't get nervous a lot.
Yeah.
My first ever NHL game, nervous. My first ever playoff game, nervous. Other than that, not too many times. But the draft, really nervous. Actually, was throwing up in the afternoon. Was got myself so worked up. Because then you didn't know if you were getting drafted. You maybe did like 2 interviews. There wasn't as much exposure as there is now. Scouts had to come see you play. There wasn't all these cameras in the rinks and stuff. And every now and then maybe you got a Saturday or Sunday afternoon game on TSN and the CHL. And so they could see you via TV, but not a lot. So you didn't really know a lot. Ken Holland grew up in my same hometown as Medicine Hat, so I talked to him a little bit, but really had no idea. So as it went through the rounds, and when you're 18 back in those days, you could only go in the first 3 rounds. You couldn't go after that. So really nervous. First time I'd ever been in the States. First time ever on a plane flying to Buffalo, beautiful downtown Buffalo back then. So the old rink. But didn't know much about Detroit because, like what I just talked about, didn't see him a lot on TV. The only time I saw the Red Wings, and to say that's weird because that's an original 6 team, was when they played the Oilers in the playoffs, and they came out of, I think, the old Adams division, was it? And they won it and came out of that, and they got beat by the Oilers. Obviously, they had a great team, but that was the only time I saw Detroit player Steve Yzerman. So I didn't know much about the state of Michigan or Detroit. Just the fact that I was drafted by them, I was ecstatic because once you start reading about them, original 6 team, and then came down to Detroit for the first time to training camp. And I think it was in Flint, in the old rink there. So, and I remember how sitting in the room, correct myself, 4th time I was nervous because you look around, there's Steve Yzerman and Bob Probert and Joey Kosher was there then. So a lot of cool guys that I grew up, watching play, or had their hockey cards at home, I should say. So it was for sure a moment where you're in awe.
Okay, so leading up to that moment, because hearing you say that you were nervous, I wish so much that I had that cool as a cucumber, good and bad moments, let it just roll off my back element to my personality. Tell me about your mom and dad growing up in Medicine Hat, and if you were to attribute your laid-back nature that I think is such a critical part of you, where does that come from?
Throughout my whole minor hockey, my parents were not relaxed. My mom would drive me nuts some days prior to the game. She'd be more nervous than I was throughout the day. I finally said, especially in the playoffs here in Detroit, listen, I can't see you before the game. You're making me nervous because you're nervous, and I'm not ever like that. But you get nervous with somebody else. My dad pushed me a lot, made sure I never let up. At the time, when you're a young kid, you get mad. Why are you talking about me like that way? But in the end, toughened me up for having an opportunity, getting me ready to have a chance to make it. Because then you had a lot of tough coaches in midget and Bantam. It wasn't like it is now where there's a lot of different coaches every year. You were playing for that guy and that was it. But I'd say my calmness came from, one, Ken Holland mentored me in Medicine Hat since I was 14, 15. So that was a huge advantage to have a pro scout, a guy that's been through everything. Then became the assistant GM, now Hall of Famer. To have a guy like that as a mentor and a guy that's really was there every step of the way with me. So real fortunate for that. And then I move on to the NHL. I look back at all my partners, and that's a big part of it. I played my first year in Pro Adirondack while I was with Alan Bester. So he was 32 then. So he established himself as a pro by that point. He played a lot of games in Toronto. So he'd been through the good and the bad in the National Hockey League. He taught me a lot. And then I came to the NHL, and Tim Chevelday was here. And he was going through some ups and downs, but he was always calm and just played. So he was a great mentor for me. Then I had Vinny Rendo, who had played in a lot of difficult spots too, and he was my partner for a while. And he was just a laid-back dude who just go play Ozzie. Don't worry about what anybody else says. And so he was a great mentor for me. Didn't play with him for that long, but I got a chance. Then I got Bob Essenza, who's Michigan State alumni from Michigan. Yeah. Can't be a more laid-back guy than the X-Man. The Bob is a great dude. Got him from Winnipeg because that was my next partner. And actually ended up playing the playoffs that year, and he supported me, and he was great. And then he left. Then Mike Vernon. Yeah. And I got him. He was awesome. He had won a cup in Calgary. I grew up watching him play against Edmonton, who they were my favorite team. Vernon was never my favorite team. But he was great as in just, don't worry about what anybody says. Just go play. We're in this together, and we'll do this as a group, and never take it too serious, and never get down on yourself. And really, probably the biggest influence on me up until the point of my end of my career, when then I went from Vernon to Ken Reggett, who played in Toronto, to Bill Ranford. These are all guys I grew up watching play. So, I mean, this is a gauntlet of awesome goalies, and you can attest to that. And then I go to having Dominic Hasek, which at the end of my career I needed, because you get older and things get tough, and some days you don't want to do it, other days you don't. And I see his guy come in, he's 39, 38 at the time. And I never seen a guy work harder in my life, and he pushed me the whole time and showed me a different way of working. Because I think that from that time I was with the Islanders to St. Louis, I wasn't exactly the best practice goalie in the league, I would say. And I kind of let myself slide a bit. And one of the reasons probably I ended up going to the Islanders and then St. Louis. And I needed kind of a reset for practice. And when he came in, I think that he gave me that. He was, and you hear stuff about Dom, but he was a gamer. And I remember one time we were playing Chicago when Patrick Kane was a rookie. We had no idea who he is. And you know, as a goalie, if you know the guy shooting, you know his two moves. Yeah. This young Patrick Kane comes out of nowhere, grows up in Buffalo watching Dominic play. Well, he beat Dom pretty good. So we go to practice Monday. It was a Sunday afternoon NBC game, and Dom lines up 100 pucks at center. We had to stop every one against Federer, against Yzerman, like all Shanny, all the top dogs, before we could leave the ice. They scored, the puck went back to center if we stopped the one in the corner. We were out there for like forever. Yeah. Just gas, but he was attention to detail and a guy that really, he pushed me. I would never play till I was 38 if it wasn't for him. And I remember one more story. I'm talking a lot for you here. We were in Pittsburgh, and he wasn't playing. It was the year I went in. It was our last game 6 in Pittsburgh, and he didn't have like the same reflexes. He was 43. Yeah. And he wanted to prove himself. He still had it. He lined up pucks at hash marks, and you would never do this, and I would never do this. And he stood on the goal line, and guys took slap shots from the hash marks, getting into it from the blue line as hard as they could to see if he could get it or not. And this was in pregame. The season was over for him. Yeah. And he's 43. So his determination to prove not only to himself, but everybody else, he still had it. And just every day his work ethic and practice and how good he was. And I'm standing there and watching this, and I had to try and get somewhere close to it just so I didn't embarrass myself every day. It made me better.
Wow. I'm thinking about a bunch of things. One of the things I'm thinking about when you go through this list of your partners and their role, you want to be in the net. And it's always been an interesting dynamic, because there are certain situations, you and I both know, where you're pulling for the other guy, but you don't mind when you see a soft goal go in.
Yeah, because you want your chance.
You want your chance. So, but Ozzie, because you've had to dig in for everything that you've ever gotten, and I admire that to the ends of the earth for you. How did you, as part of your mindset, when you wanted to be in the net, still not just say it, but truly in all earnestness, support the other guy?
Well, I think a lot of times we both play, and Scotty would more or less have both of us switching on and off, and he had his ways of having us in certain cities where he thought we'd be at our best. And but the one time I was disappointed was when we won in '97, and I didn't play in the playoffs. I played a lot in the regular season. Yeah. Vernie got hurt. And at the moment, you never look at the big picture of it, where you don't look at it through somebody else's eyes. You're only thinking of yourself, right? I mean, through Scotty's eyes or through the players. Well, Vernie won a cup. I played the year before we lost. We kind of split a bit. My record against Colorado wasn't great back then. And Vernie his was good. And he was a veteran guy. And I look back on it, I had to realign the way I thought then, because I had a choice. I remember Dave Lewis told me, we talked about earlier, he says, and Scotty didn't tell me I wasn't playing. Dave Lewis did. Dave goes, "You're in a holding pattern. You're amber right now," which meant I was in a holding pattern. I'm like, all right. So, and of course I was mad. He told me back in the lunchroom down at the Joe Louis Arena, just outside by the Olympia Club there. And I was sour because I wanted to play because you're competitive. And then I was driving home. I thought about it. I was still mad. So, and then I was still mad the next day. And I was terrible in practice. And I said to myself, if I don't realign the way I think, if I'm needed, I'm not going to be ready. And that's going to be way worse than any of this right now. So, and I got to support Vernie because he's done the same for me the whole time I've been here. So, and that's kind of the way I took it is this is a good opportunity for me to be a good teammate, but to get better in practice because now I'm going to get a ton of practice time. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I was 25 at the time, maybe 24. And so I practiced a ton with our goalie coaches and the players that were on the ice and tried to get better. So there's always something you can take as a positive. I think I got into 3 games that year. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Was in for like 10 minutes in New Jersey or against Colorado, just a little bit. But looking back on it, Scotty made the right decision, like he always did, right, for the most part. And Vernie's best series was against Patrick Roy, who he beat with the Flames in Montreal. So there's lots of things that lined up to say probably should have started Vernie, which was the right choice in the end. And it was my job to be supportive and be ready and make myself better in case I was needed. There's nothing worse than not putting in the work. And I've done that too, sitting on the bench and you're not ready and you see 2 go in. And you're like, oh, please don't score third when I can't go in. Then the head starts to go down. I didn't San Jose nor the goalie sits there. I've hit in that corner many a night. Babcock's looking for me. My head's down. I'm hiding.
I did that in my one and only NHL game.
And he radios the radio guy. Do you know where he is? Comes looking for me. I'm like, no, I'm not here. Because you're not ready. Yeah. So I made a point of always putting in the work and getting myself ready and making sure I was overly prepared where whatever happened in the game, I could just go in and play.
Do you know, Oz, now knowing this, seeing this through your eyes and where you were at en route to winning that first cup in 97, 2 former guys that have dug in, Scotty, and just recently George McPhee, who was the general manager of Washington, 98. Both of them have come on the show and they have said, wow, because now they're replaying those games.
Yeah.
Didn't realize how good Osgood was in the Washington series. I know it was a sweep, but both of those guys who I trust implicitly the way they see the game, each on one side for the Wings and the Caps. So beyond what you just said, what are the other things that were invaluable in the backup experience of 97 that allowed you to really shine in your first cup as a starter against the Caps?
Well, talk about always watching Vernie in the playoffs. And him and I, that's when you didn't get your own room. So I was rooming with Vernie the entire playoffs. Yeah. Just seeing how he prepared himself. And there were some tough times. I mean, there was series against Colorado, that series especially, it was never a for sure thing. And he had some ups and downs and just seeing how he reacted and how he stayed calm the whole time. Never really deviated from his thought process or his preparation ever. And even, in pregame skate, I'd watch him to see what he did the same thing over and over again to make sure that he never had those ups and downs. Because we had a very good team. If you kept yourself on an even keel and made 5-6 really good saves during the course of a game, you can give yourself a real good chance to win. And just seeing how and I remember I'd sit in my stall after, which was beside his, obviously, and I'd listen to him, how he talked to the media and how he, good or bad, and how he answered questions, how he reacted after. Always the same all the time. Always real calm. Always, I don't want to say he was easy with the reporters, but he said the right thing is a good way I can put it. And so it was a lot of different things that I could sit back from a different perspective instead of being in the chaos. I was kind of on the outside watching, so I could take that stuff into the next year when I played.
Did you guys, one question off the ice, then one on the ice. Off the ice, when you're rooming together, were you both able to as soon as you decide, okay, we're taking, and how long was the nap? Did you both fall asleep? I assume there wasn't any type of snoring issue. I mean, what was it like?
No, Vernie was the worst snorer ever.
Well, then how did you sleep?
I never did, ever. Had to learn how to sleep. And I was a big-time sleeper. You know, when you're young, those afternoon naps, how spoiled we are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're the best thing in the world. 2 hours.
Yeah.
Down.
And he snored the whole time?
Yeah.
He fell asleep right away?
Yeah, he'd fall asleep right away. Like, we'd be at night talking, I'd be like, no, please. Poof, he'd be out. Like, he got shot with a tranquilizer like Frank the Tank in Old School. And he'd be snoring right away. But God bless him. It was fun staying with him. We had a lot of good times, on and off the ice together. But I love running into Vernie in Calgary when we go there. He's one of the classics. He's one of the best around. And It was great times with him, and I was so happy for him when he won, because everybody said he couldn't win after Calgary, and he wasn't the reason. Calgary had a great team, so that was a big deal for him. I remember when we won the next year, he was the first guy to call me on my phone, and he got. I mean, Ken Holland traded the Conn Smythe winner after the playoffs. That's maybe the only time ever.
Yeah,
and he's taught me humility and taught me how to act and taught me how to how to treat other people, regardless if it's in your favor or not.
I remember because I was part of like the third guy American Hockey League run with Springfield in '97.
Yeah.
And actually one of our goalies ahead of me was, our dear friend and at a point in the future, your teammate, Emmanuel Legacy. Okay. So after we get bounced, and part of it was Manny hit the referee against Hershey, turned the whole series. All right. Got himself suspended.
Yeah.
All right. So I come in with a Westerner by the name of Scotty Levins, who was on our team. Wonderful guy. Yeah. And so we caught Darren McCarty's big goal and being able to win against Philadelphia. And I remember people around Detroit saying, when Mike Vernon won the Conn Smythe, well, they could have won with anybody. And I see when teams get good, and I almost think you have to have played goal to appreciate this, how hard it is when the guy at the other end is standing on his head. You don't even have a sweat. Your mind can become your biggest enemy. Ozzie, do you agree just how hard that is, and why is it so hard?
Well, it is. It's a learned trade. I'll say that. It takes time. I was always on teams that got tons of shots, and I got to say, when I went to the Islanders, it was easier to play there than it was in Detroit, and we had a very good team. We had made the playoffs that year, but a lot of nights it was hard for me to look bad because I was getting a lot of shots. Either I was a star or we lost because we were a team in transition. I would put it that way. And we did have a very good team because we picked up a lot of players. But in Detroit, I mean, besides the 2002 team, there is a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame right now off that team. So when you look at the roster, it's not going to be because of the forwards. And then you go to the defense, and now you have the Russian fives there. You have Fetisov and Konstantinov is there, and you have Nick Lidstrom. So you aren't looking there. You're looking to the goalie. So your job there, and you really got to depart. You got to shrink it down, and you had to make, like I said before, 5 to 10 big saves. And there's always going to be times where you're going to give up chances. But if you keep yourself focused, a lot of it was repetition in your preparation, for sure. Because there's games where you get 20 shots. There's games you got 9. There's games you got 5 scoring chances against. So what I do is I'd shrink the game down into 5 minutes. And if we were up in the third period, say by 10 minutes to go, I'd say, okay, you're shutting the door no matter what. It could be a breakaway, 2-on-0, 3-on-1. Because you never want to let yourself off the hook. Well, if it's a 2-on-0 and they score, it's not a big deal. It's not my fault. Well, that's not the way that works. And I think Scotty Bowman taught me that too. It's not okay to let in one late, like the last minute, the last 2 minutes. So I tried to condition myself to really be focused in no matter what the score was, whether it was 6-1 on the board, 7-1, play the game the same way every time. And you'll be successful in it, especially behind those teams. And I knew I'd have to make, I don't even know, 10 grade A saves a game, I would say, maybe a little more. But if I could really dial myself in on those and be focused on making those, I'd have a great chance to win each and every night. And it wasn't, I had some games where I had 17 shots and 6 would go in, and the fans would be booing the goalie. Well, it doesn't look great, but sometimes that would happen. It was just when you stand between the red pipes, and you'll know, stuff happens. The puck goes in from everywhere in the rink. That's just the way it is. But playing for that team, saying that, though, the players are great. They never put the pressure on you for that. You were just part of the team. And I think that's why we were so good, is everybody's just part of a team. Nobody was individualized. It didn't matter who scored the most, who had the most assists, who did what. It didn't matter if Nick Lidstrom was this stud player from Sweden that was a Norris Trophy winner 4 or 5 times. Even if he wasn't in the lineup, we could still win because of the way we played and the way everybody played for each other. So that's the biggest takeaway that I take from being on all those Red Wing teams. It was just a really great team.
Okay, so you're saying, because soft goals happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, this show's called Digging In. And I, very candidly, one of the reasons, and there are many, that I'm so proud to call you a friend is because it was never easy. And there were really countless moments that you had to have amnesia and not let it impact your confidence. So you're telling me all the greatness in that room and a guy like Scotty, did they ever, they let the soft goals go for any of the goaltenders and they didn't get on you about it?
No, never got on you really, ever. Nobody really got on anybody ever. I mean, the guys that did never lasted there.
Yeah.
I could say I won't name names, but the guys that did and didn't conform to what we're trying to do just weren't there. Yeah. And no, never. I mean, there were some humdingers too in the playoffs for sure. You had to bounce back from those.
I couldn't believe you always bounced back.
And that was Ken Holland talking to me from when I was a young age. I was fortunate to have him, and I don't know why I had that in me even in junior, even when I was in midget. But Ken was always around. He always said, play for the next one. If it goes in, because back when I was in junior, if your average was under 4, you were cooking. Like, you were on fire. Yeah. You were like up for the MVP of the league. Yeah. And your save percentage was even bursting towards 90. You thought you were kicking. So goals went in more frequent than they did later when I was in the NHL. So you had to really, you're in 6-5 games. Yeah. So it was all about playing for the next save, shutting the door after something had happened. And I always took pride in that. It's 2-1. Those aren't coming back. I can't take that back. But what can I do from this moment on? Well, I can hammer my stick against the post. I can throw my stick against the boards. I can mope around and let another one probably, or worry about what happened there. Or I can continue to play and, like you said, dig in for the rest of the game. And that was a choice I made. Now, did I forget about those goals? No, because I never wanted it to happen twice. I look at the film and say, okay, that can't happen again. I can't do that. I correct myself and work on it in practice. But not at that moment. You don't have the time to do that, especially in the NHL. You gotta play for that next save.
Were you able, whether it was a great outcome or a tough outcome, whether you were on the road or driving home from the Joe, could you park it and leave it?
No, sometimes yeah, sometimes no. It's hard.
Yeah, well, I know.
I mean, I'd be like, I don't think anybody does. It's impossible. I remember after that Langburner goal in Dallas, I had to take a long walk. I was at this end, and you had to come through the gate and walk all the way around the rink to your dressing room.
Yeah.
And when you're in goalie gear, it's the old deer hair and leather. It takes a little while, and I'm like, "Are you effing kidding me? Like, why? This is one of my best games I've ever had."
Yeah.
We're up 2-1. They scored on a tip to make it 2-2. I don't remember who scored. Now we're in overtime, and it was like 10 seconds in, 11 maybe. And I was like, then I was pissed. I was like, why me? Because I was always getting to that point where I was finally over the hump.
Yeah.
And then I get pushed back down. Then I get pushed back, not pushed back down, but another challenge that I got to overcome. And I was just, then actually when I was walking around, like, I got to do this again. And then I almost questioned myself for a second. I'm like, I don't know if I can do it again. I've got to do it every time. Like, you're like, that's enough kind of thing. Then I was pissed.
Yeah.
At myself, because I'm like, that's enough of that. And I was on the plane. I was all the way home. I couldn't get out of my head.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, so I got home, and then I think it was Stevie noticed it. He goes, Ozzie, let it go, because he knew, because he was like that. He wasn't going to give you like lecture. You just let it go. And then I let it go. And I'm like, that's it. I told Ken Holland, I said, I'm playing unbelievable next game. That's it. It's over. It ends now. Wow. And then. But you don't ever just. Sometimes you do get over, other times you don't.
Well, I just
and that's just life. I mean, it's more difficult sometimes than others, and over periods of time, circumstances, and somebody's like, you just have enough. You just had enough. You got to get your mental part of it where you just have had enough of it, right? And that's where you get to that point, but never in a negative way.
Ozzie, I just look because. Listen, and you mentioned life. It's not just hockey. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. Any number of these circumstances, when I look at your career, which I believe is a Hall of Fame career, I believe that absolutely. But, you went from backup, starter, backup, injuries, start, and then, I was just looking at it, and you had a rough stretch in the regular season before the 2009 playoffs.
Oh.
And I'm telling you, hands down.
I can tell you why that happened.
Well, let's dig in.
Well, because I dug in the summer too much. That's what happened. Honestly, it did. I was 35. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to win the cup. And I won when I was 25, won 10 years later. It was nonstop, right?
Yeah.
Right through
Yeah.
the summer. I wasn't in the, you can play in junior, you can play in midget. Can't play in NHL when you're not ready.
Yeah.
My start sucked, and Ty Conklin played great. He actually bailed me out that year because he played so damn good. And if it wasn't for him, I would have never got the chance to play in the playoffs because he was outstanding all year long. I'd come in and play one good game, then I'd play bad, and then I'd be back. I was never like good. I was always really up and down. I could just never find my stride. And I remember I was almost getting close to getting my game, and then Babcock would take me out. Then I was almost close, and he'd take me out. And I was just, and you kind of think of that, well, I deserve, because I won the year before. So then you get that in your head now. And that's not the way it works anymore, though. I mean, you watch a lot of teams have two goalies in the playoffs, and Marc-Andre Fleury is a good point, too.
Yeah.
One of my favorite goalies of all time.
Yeah.
Leonard comes in, well, he played great when he went in the playoffs this year. I was fired up for him. And I was like, well, and now we go back to all the guys that taught me. Now I'm those guys, and Ty Conklin's me,
Yeah.
essentially. So now I got to support Ty Conklin. I got to keep myself and get myself somehow back to where I need to be. And part of that, too, is when you play that season, but I'm splitting with Dom, 40 games and 40 games. Now my so-called security blanket's gone because I was going to play 40 with him.
Yeah.
Now with Ty Conklin, can I play 60? I'm 36. It's hard. The regular season gets long when you get older, and the playoffs are fun.
Yeah.
So now the playoffs start, and I was ready to play the playoffs. I was fired up for that. And so some coaches will say there's no switch, and there is a switch for older guys when you've been through a lot, because there's certain circumstances where when you've played in big games and you're ready for that is separated from the regular season, where it's difficult to play some nights when you get older. And I see it in guys now that are older that are playing, and then I can predict when, not every time, but when they're going to play great. And Lundqvist didn't play for a long time this year. I said, he's going to shut us out in Detroit. Sure enough, shuts us out because he's fired up to play again. He's a competitor. And I just remember getting on a roll in those playoffs and felt great because it wasn't a daunting thought in my head, which is my own fault for not correcting myself, is, the 7 months of season is so long, 82 games. Now I only had, you can dial it in for 2 months and play great for 2 weeks and then get ready for the next series and play great again and then get ready. So that was in my thought process, which I should have probably used in the regular season ahead of probably going to work out a little more after we'd won. That would have been a good call too. But that just didn't happen. The parade went from Woodward all the way to Medicine Hat, Alberta, all the way to Vernon Birch, Columbia, all the way back to Medicine Hat, back to Detroit again. I was never off the parade for the whole summer.
Okay, because of the way you responded, in the playoffs the next year, and I'm going to get back to that in 1 second.
So it was self-inflicted is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, hey, listen.
It was too much digging in.
I got a lot of self-inflicted sabotage, but I had fun doing it.
Yeah.
Best moment that you can share, the storyteller that you are, during that self-inflicted summer with the Stanley Cup. You got to give me one good story.
Ken Holland had the cup. We live on the same lake in Kalamalka Lake, but he had all his kids were younger then. Ken's a worry word a little bit. And all these teenagers are over there, and Ken's getting tired, and and we're golfing and doing everything else. His tournament's coming up. He's a guy that never sleeps. He's exhausted. He had the cup for 3 days. I had it for 3, which was way too long. So he had it for 1. The cup guy calls me at like midnight. Kenny doesn't want the cup at his house anymore. He's worried about somebody breaking it. Somebody's going to steal it. Something's going to happen to him. He doesn't want to be on the hook. I'm staying at your house. The cup's at your house for 5 days. That was a turning point, which kind of started everything for the rough start in the season the next year. So I had it at my house for 5 days, but I remember the first night the guy showed up at about midnight, 12:30, and it was just me and my neighbor, Tyler Wright, who played in the NHL, and a couple of my buddies, my wife and his wife, and just sat there. And I remember I never really looked at it closely before, like in that setting. I just drank a lot of beers, listened to way too much country music, and just read every single name. And we were telling stories about each player and went back to, I remember this when this guy played. That was a cool moment because in the chaos of having the parties and people around, you never really like step back and look at it and go through it and tell stories about the guys on it until that moment. So we did that till like the sun came up. Just talked about the players on there, 80s, 70s, which we could remember. It's a little bit out of my time, but the 90s, who won, and just, it was cool. It was cool.
It's pretty neat. Did Kenny Holland, based upon the fact that he made you have 5 days with it when you struggled at the beginning, self-inflicted, did he give you a little bit more rope because he was culpable?
No, he didn't. He was, but he didn't give me any rope. Either to Mike Babcock, he gave me a little rope for sure. And him and I had arguments. Oh, you should put me in. You shouldn't. You should put me in. You shouldn't. And then I use it now as I look. Did I really deserve to play lots then? No. 08 was 08. I played great in the playoffs then, but I had to do the stuff that was necessary to get myself back to that again. And it took a while. Played good at the end of the season. It felt good, but I still didn't know I was going to play in the playoffs or not. I may play conks or not. And I would have to say my leash was pretty darn short when I played that first game. If we would have lost and we were playing Columbus, who's always kind of a nemesis. They worked hard against us, made things real difficult on us. And I think Mason was their goalie.
Yeah, he was.
Who was like, he was the rookie of the year.
Yeah.
He played fantastic. And they had, Nash was there. They had a lot of good young players that were kind of just playing.
Yep.
And they were hard on us. And I remember the first game, a lot of lucky saves. And I thought back, I'm like, 2 or 3 of those would have won. I probably wouldn't have played the next game.
Yeah.
If we would have lost. And none of that would have ever happened. So real fortunate but fortunate to play with conks because you always think about yourself, right? Selfishly as an athlete. It's hard on conks. Conks is there. It comes from, I believe, Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Here's me going through all this stuff. I actually got a week break from Ken Holland that year. I was so dreadful. And he's got to watch me go through all this soap opera crap while he's trying to play good and have a good career himself. So, I owe a lot to him for not only keeping me afloat, but him playing great and giving me a chance to play in the playoffs when he probably maybe deserved to play before me that year.
Yeah. You and I could go on until, 2022. So I have so much.
But then it'll be good by then. So maybe we should just sit here and do that.
Yeah, exactly. We can't do anything self-inflicted here while we're
can't.
doing this. How, as a goaltender, when the guy making the decisions, how were Scotty Bowman and Mike Babcock similar? How were they different?
Scotty would be a lot more animated and a lot more verbal, where Mike Babcock had a sheet on the wall which had the lineup and which goalie was playing. But usually, as a goalie, every now and then there'd be a surprise, but not a lot. Where Scotty was real animated. I mean, I grew up in Edmonton a little bit. Vernie was from Calgary. We'd always go out west. I'd play Edmonton because that's where my parents were then. And Vernie played in Calgary because he played there and all his buddies were there. Well, I would play bad in Edmonton, and Vernie would play bad in Calgary. And I remember, I think it was Neuendijk and Joel Otto, I believe, maybe. Or Roberts. Roberts.
Rob's good
Rob's
man.
scored through Vernie's legs like 3 times in the game. 5. So Scotty perceived that as they're knowing where to shoot on him. So he pulled us into the office, and he more or less said, "You are never playing in Edmonton, and you're never playing in Calgary again. Don't ask me a thing." So we knew that was the only place we were both not playing, and we'd play. And that stood for like 3 years. It was perfect. But we switched off and on. So Scotty was a lot more animated, and he would tell you where Mike more, he'd have a plan.
Yeah.
And it usually wouldn't deviate from it, like from week to week.
Yeah.
So sometimes it would benefit you, and other times it wouldn't.
Yeah. After the Cup in '98, knowing that he had made the decision, which now you say was a good decision with your dear friend Mike Vernon in '97, did you have any special one-on-one moment after the way you shined against the Caps with Scotty, where anything he said behind the scenes? Great job, Ozzie.
Probably just that. He didn't say a lot after, really. I don't remember really seeing him in the room after a lot. He kind of does his own thing. He reminded me a lot of, God bless him, Herb Brooks when they beat in the movie there, and he's in the hallway to kind of celebrating on his own and letting the players have theirs. I mean, Scotty was a lot like that. You never really saw him in a lot of the celebrations. I mean, you did the year they won in 2002, which I got a chance to watch, because that was his last game. He was retiring. He put the skates on, which was real cool. But I don't remember really seeing him in '98. I remember he came on the ice late. He was kind of doing his own thing. And of course, everybody took backstage to Vladdy being on the ice that year. So that was a big deal for us to have him there. But Scotty was he was subdued in that, and he wasn't really throwing himself out there a lot. I don't really recall what he said to me. I just remember the dressing room in Washington, you being the smallest, tightest room to ever have a Stanley Cup celebration in history ever. Yeah. That thing is like an old, that thing wouldn't be legal now in these dress. The players wouldn't even go in that room anymore. Yeah. Or do they have to? They still have to. But that room was ridiculously small. But I remember after that being relieved, I think, more than anything. I hear players say it all the time, but it is true. Because there was a lot of pressure because Vernie was a Conn Smythe winner. He had won the year before. There was really no in-between for me. Either I was going to win or maybe I'm not back. So to win there was more of it was just a real relief. And I will say this, as a player, and what all of our teams did is we played for each other a lot, and I think you saw a lot of that with Tampa's team and with the St. Louis Blues, who just won as well. But the guys played for me, for sure. Played hard for me that year, and you can sense it. And just like we played for Dallas Drake in 08, when that was his last year, and you play for certain guys, and you play for Darren McCarty, you've been through a lot and came back in 08, and Chris Chelios' last year was that year. Well, it wasn't his last, but with us. So you play for each other. I think that's the biggest thing I can say about, other than the Red Wing teams being real teams, is we played for each other more than I believe any other team did.
Quick react, because I asked you about, Scotty. Yeah. And Scotty, like, I think of Nick Lidstrom's, this is just my own observation, and I've had the privilege to get to know Scott in different capacity. I never knew he had a great sense of humor. I love to pick his brain about the game. He teaches me to see things better, greatest coach of all time. But Nick Lidstrom's jersey retirement, Mike Babcock spoke. 3 cups were with Scotty. Scotty just sat in the background. Yeah. I just see him. I just see him, and you said he never really celebrated with you guys in the locker room. He's a humble guy.
Yeah, Scotty's not. He doesn't. I think he enjoys the process of winning and how hard it is and coaching, and he loves the in-game stuff. I said he's the only coach ever that could out-coach and intimidate the other coach during a game. Yeah. Like matching lines and being ahead of whatever he was doing the time before. And he could put guys like Chris Draper, Kurt Malpe, Bob Erie, all these guys in positions where they were going to succeed to the highest of their level, better than any other coach that I've had, and even myself for that matter. And that goes with putting Vernie in and not me, and then waiting for the next year. He has a knack for knowing players, not only on your team, but every other team in the league, who fits in against who and who can play well against what group of players or what other team, and who plays better in what rink. And he knows every stat of every player. And I think he enjoys that whole thing. And I think after the games, he exhales and goes on his own, does his own thing. He enjoys winning for sure. He wouldn't have coached that long, but I think he's attuned to knowing when to step back and when to really put the foot down, and he was good at that. Does he have some eccentric ways of doing it? Oh, for sure he did. A lot of them were mentioning Johnny Bauer and guys used to play with when he's lecturing me and Mike Vernon on many a night and many occasion. He left us at a hotel once because we were late, so we had to take a cab to the plane. Back then, you didn't have the GPS, so we had to kind of figure it out. But it was never personal. It was, things happened, but it wasn't like Scotty didn't like us and we didn't like Scotty. And the one thing that he did, though, is he taught us how to play. He'd be more animated when we were up 5-1 because he wanted us to play the right way all the time, and that's how you won. That's how you win. You don't win in the NHL by playing half the time, and we learned that. We played half the time before. We were very good offensively, but we couldn't keep the puck out of our net. And Steve Eisen was a big part of that. A guy who scored a ton of goals, scored one of the best offensive players in the 80s and in the 90s. Then Sergei came, and Stevie changed his game to a two-way forward. And, if your leadership doesn't do that, the other guys don't follow. And he's a big reason why the Red Wings went on that, probably the number one reason, had a 25-year run, is he changed the way he played and really led us through some real tough series and tough games. And there was never a deviation for us. We just kept playing the same way all the time.
You started talking about the stare technique. I've had a couple of friends, I'm not good looking enough, that I used to say that we'd go out for a couple of beers and, single guys, and they could just use the stare technique. I have to somehow be funny. And Scotty really used that stare technique to extend his mojo from the bench.
Yeah. Oh, he did. guys leaving the ice, staring at the goalie sometimes in the net. Oh, if he pulled you sometimes, he'd give you the full stare down after, and you'd almost start not laughing, but get to the bench. It's because it's coming, right? He never like sometimes he'd mention things days later, but usually it was over after that, and he'd move on to something else. And I think that he was good at doing a lot of different things at once, and definitely. I don't want to say a different guy, but just a guy that could departmentalize a lot of things at one specific moment in time. Barry Smith would run the practices because Barry was really good at running the practices, and Scotty was fine with that up until a point when Barry didn't do what he wanted to do, which was also humorous. But they got along great, and everybody kind of did their own thing. And Scotty was I remember sometimes Scotty would come on the bench like just during the anthem, and he was mad if there was smoke show or fireworks display in our crowd. I think he put our rink on notice, our own rink in the playoffs, because it was too much for the game. Yeah. And his domain was on the bench. Yeah. And probably the best bench coach to ever coach in the National Hockey League. I would have to imagine a lot of other coaches, his peers would say the same thing. Everybody thought we left wing locked the whole game. We never did it the whole game. We did it for 10 minutes. Then we didn't do it. And we did it for 5. And we always did different things. So people were always trying to. That's why I don't understand nowadays why teams play the same way the whole game. Yeah. And have the same power play with both units and don't change the way they do things. Scotty was changing all the time, and teams had to try and figure out what we're doing. And then you add that to the talent and add to who we have on the team. It's difficult to beat us. And then his imagination for building a team. You forget about that. Yeah. Really, Jim Devellano, too, you don't want to forget about him. He's a spectacular guy. He has a lot to do with a lot of great franchises, the Islanders, the Red Wings. The Russian Five, nobody thought of that. Everybody was dumping Chase off the glass, and he's like, I'm going to bring these 5 guys over here. When they first came over here, we were like, what is this? Even the guys on our team are like, what? Because it's different than what we're used to playing. But that vision was something nobody else had. Scotty always had a different thought process of building teams and playing that was ahead of everybody else.
No doubt about it. Now I want to see the great storyteller you are. I'm going to ask you about some different figures and what story comes to Ozzie's mind that defines your relationship with these people.
All right.
Mr. and Mrs. I, Mike and Marian Ilitch.
To me, I talk about the guys we had. Eiserman was a big part of it. Stevie, Scotty. You're talking about the 25 years of constantly making the playoffs. But the Ilitch is really, and I think of Mr. Ilitch as, he was a massive sports fan. He'd do anything for the Tigers to win. He'd do anything for the Red Wings to win. And passionate. His passion was through the roof. I remember we were playing Dallas, and in 2008, I believe it was, and everybody was saying, well, they can't win in the cap era. They can't win in the cap era. They just spent all that money and bought their teams. And I remember he showed up in Dallas, and we beat them in Game 6. He was so fired up. I told them we could do it with you guys. No, he wanted to prove people that we could win, not only the way we did it, but he could win anyway. And he was like the ultimate sports fan. I remember Tiger games in his box, always there. He loved the Red Wings. He knew all the players. I remember we lost to San Jose in the first round, and I put up in Baker, who extended his career about 5 years with that pass. And he called me on the phone and said, I remember I was at the rear front apartments down beside the Joe, and the old cords attached to the phone. Drapes goes, it's Mr. Ilitch wants to talk to me. I'm like, what? Drapes was in there. We were out the night before. Yeah. Hello, hello, trying to. Yeah. He's like, hey, Chris, I just want to tell you, how great you played this year, and you had a wonderful year, and look forward to having you here for a long time. Thanks for doing what you did this year. That was it. But then it's like it takes you from being down in the dumps and wherever you're feeling to like put in perspective in a simple way, and something that he didn't have to do. So he was an owner that cared about the players a lot, and we knew it. And when he showed up in the room, in our dressing room, to talk to us, it meant something. So he just wasn't there for just a passing by. Yeah. So it was a real honor to play for him. Great. He's the biggest reason the Red Wings who are who they are today.
Defining moment. You mentioned him telling you to let a tough goal go coming back from Dallas. Defining moment with your captain, Steve Yzerman, that epitomizes who he is.
I had to room with him in '98.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he that was there. Put him with me, keep me. I don't want to say calm because I was pretty calm as it was, but he had and he still does a way of. And he's not. People are always intimidating. He's not intimidating. He has a way that he says things and approaches you that because he genuinely wants you to do as good as you can. He wants to take everything out of you that he knows you have and make you the best you can be. That would have been one of them. Just like, hey, are you okay? I said, yeah. He goes, hey, let it go and go play. And I remember he said that. And then I remember another funny story. I'd come back from I think it was St. Louis or the Islanders. St. Louis, I'm back with the Wings. Fired up to be back. Well, I had the wrong underwear on. I had my St. Louis Blues stuff on still. And he looks at me and he goes, you can't effing wear that in this dressing room. And that was like the first time I was ever really scared of him because he was mad because that's like disrespect. And I'm like, how do I have this on for starters? It was like in training camp. Just, goalies, we lose focus every now and then. But I'm in the lounge, and the worst part is I'm on the couch, kick back with a beer with my St. Louis Blues stuff on. He's looking at me like, are you effing kidding me?
Yeah.
And I'm afraid he said that too. But a guy that he knew when to push you and he knew when to not do it.
Yeah.
And now you see how he is as a GM. And he built Tampa Bay good. He's doing a good job with the Red Wings. It takes some time, but I know some young guys are like, well, Stevie's hard. It's not hard. He wants what's best for you.
Yeah.
He wants you guys to do well, and he's making you because he knows how hard it is.
Yeah.
Guys that know how hard it is are going to be a little harder on you, but for a good reason.
Yeah.
So I have nothing but respect for Stevie.
I have to ask follow-up. You roomed with him in '98. You spoke about the snoring issues of Mike Vernon.
Oh,
the
he
year
was a
before.
great
How was
roommate.
Steve? What a dry sense of humor Steve has,
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
world class.
He's world class sense of humor, and
Yeah.
you would never guess it.
Yeah.
Steve, Mike Vernon. It's like he would have been like rooming with David Lee Roth, where Stevie was more Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the more calm Van Halen, where Vernie was the original Van Halen.
Yeah.
Chaos constantly.
Oh, love it. Before I want to ask you about Brendan Shanahan, but before I ask you if there's a story, you're doing a brilliant job with this. You're digging in, Oz.
I'm trying.
I've
done it for a while.
Well, you're doing. Hey, listen, seamless. When you dropped him with Patrick Waugh, there's a shot of Shanahan looking down as you
Laughing, right?
Yeah. Did he say anything?
That's of all the photos that I've been given, that was my favorite one. Is because of it. I just don't want a photo of myself. That's boring.
Yeah.
I want photos like just in that moment, and I love that because Scotty's pissed, and he's leaning over yelling at Patrick Waugh. The trainer, John Warren's laughing.
Yeah.
Everybody else is laughing because they think it's hilarious. Tony Colucci, service of the Wings, is looking very young, great suit in the crowd. But the clothing in the crowd is ridiculous because from the 90s, right? You forget how old we are now. But I remember Scotty just yelling at Patrick Waugh the entire time. And I think Scotty had some, I don't know what type of relationship with him, probably did from these years and the Canada Cups and all that stuff. But but he wasn't happy with him at all. But that fight, I had no idea what I was doing. I think this is my only fight I've ever been in. But I relied on my experience from watching a lot of guys fight here, and the great, God bless him, Bob Probert, watching him fight, McCarty, a lot of guys I had in Adirondack too. And I think I'm going to start with my left. I've never thrown a left before, which thank goodness he didn't throw a haymaker right and hit me. I wasn't even thinking that. So my lefts were probably doing nothing. And I threw rights. I don't think I hit him too much at all. He was closer hitting me. Thank goodness he missed twice. And I think we just wrestled around. I think he ran out of gas before I did, and I threw him to the ice. I just remember being so tired, and I don't remember who the ref is, and I said to him, I'm coming off, I go, please throw me out, because I couldn't even move my arms. And you think to yourself, I'm like, and then I'm in the dressing room, I'm having one of those things you used to squeeze out, or whatever. I'm with John Wharton.
Yeah.
And my only concern was not going back in. And I was too tired. And I thought to myself, and I go, I got a whole new respect for fighters after that. like how hard it is to do that if you're in like 2 or 3 fights back then and the heavyweights are fighting. Like, I'm like, how do they even come back and play from that? You know, because you're a goalie, you're not into that a lot. And I remember best fight I've ever seen, front row seat. Shannon just got traded from Hartford, Detroit. And Proby, I hit him by accident with my stick, and he's playing for Chicago, and he turned around and was going to smile. I'm like, oh my, this is it. He's going to fucking hit me right in the face. Didn't, and Shanny fought him right in front of me for the like good 4. That's when those fights went a long time. 4 minutes was the best fight I've ever seen.
Wow. Did Patrick, by the way, did he say anything during that?
No, I had to interview him my first year. I was moved to TV.
I saw it. Yeah,
my good folks and great partners at Fox Sports decided they wanted me to interview Patrick Waugh. That was the 5th time I was nervous ever. Yeah, I was in the wood log cabin there in Colorado.
Beautiful setting.
Thank goodness, because, you're going to interview Patrick Waugh. That's what they tell me in the morning. Well, that was back when I lived it up a lot, so I never really was feeling particularly sharp in the morning. And I'm like, well, what am I going to ask him? Well, then they all write down all these questions, and they want us to talk about the fight, right? Well, I wish I could do that again because I would have done a lot different. But
oh, man. Before I get to the next guy, this is all world. I remember, and it stuck with me, you know, the great location, Joe Louis Arena.
Yeah.
But you said once we got to know each other, you said, Trip, I didn't want to go out. I want to say it was second period. I can't remember what period. You said there was one spot you didn't want to go out and play the puck because the urinal's there. I mean, it was just it was a tough piece of real estate in Joe Louis.
Yeah, and I remember how lively the boards were. Well, that was Al Sabatka. You can ask Paul Boyer about that. I think you're going to talk to him later. They put those 2x4s in the bottom to make the boards really jumpy.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't really benefit me in the second period. So if you ever watched us play there, I would never come out in the second. And that's home ice advantage back in the days. Right now, all the rinks are pretty generic. They're the same. The glass is seamless. No pucks are bouncing out. It was a known thing that we weren't going out in the second period because those boards are so ridiculous and would ricochet out. And that was done more or less on purpose, which is kind of the way it should be. It adds to,
I think
it makes the road team coming in there and having to win a game there. It was difficult, and Nick Lidstrom bouncing him off the back there constantly and made it difficult on the goalies and gave them something to think about. And a lot of goals would come off the boards and the goalie would be out of the net. But that arena was I played so much there. And I'll never forget, I got traded to the Islanders, came there 10 games in, and I stood there and I was on the other team and I'm like, and everybody's right on top of me because now I'm in the opposition and I'm like, this place is hard to play in. Now I got the appreciation of being on the other side of it. Because I'm on the other side, kicked back. I may as well have been in like a lazy boy with a flat screen some nights. And, you got all the people crowd around your end to watch you warm up and they're cheering for you and chanting your name. Well, now you're on the other side of it. It was like hostile. And I never saw that because you don't hear that stuff, right? When you're on the opposition, on the home team. I'm like, I don't really like being on the visiting team here. That's kind of what I thought. And cool rink, but this kind of sucks. And we lost like 2-1 or something. Drape scored 2 goals, and was he going for the hat-trick goal? Oh, my gosh. Poaching and doing it. He almost got it, too.
Was he saying anything?
Yeah, the whole time. Hey, well, if he would have got a hat-trick, I would never live that one down. But 2 was enough. That's been going on for years. But I remember going, I was just like, I never liked going back there with St. Louis or anybody. I was just like, it's no fun. It was a hard place to play. They had good teams. And then the fact that I'd been there before, it was just, that was the most uncomfortable games for me to ever play in.
Well, you're a Red Wing. It's in your blood. It's in your DNA. Nick Lidstrom. What do you remember most about Nick?
Another guy with a dry sense of humor. Oh, for sure.
I've heard that.
He made it look easy. Now, I played the puck a lot when I played, but I had a rule of thumb, which whenever Nick Lidstrom was on the ice, I gave the puck to him because for obvious reasons. But it was going on a stick no matter what. I was leaving it no matter what. I've never seen a guy never get beat for longer periods of time than him. And he wasn't the most opposing guy. This wasn't like a Chara. This wasn't like a huge defenseman that physically, he was a strong guy, but he had more tricks of the trade than everybody. He was like a magician. Like if a guy he would let guys get around sometimes and poke their back of their arm and the puck would go off their stick. He had ways of doing things that were so much different than anybody else. I mean, you can attest. You've seen him play lots of triple. I don't think he ever got hit. Like it's to go that many years without ever getting hit hard that means you're way too smart to be playing hockey, because the passes he made, I compared him, when I had him and Brian Fralsky back there in 08, I said, it's like having Tom Brady and Peyton Manning back there. It was unbelievable, all the passes, and I can name guys. I put Pronger was like that, McInnes was like that, but these two guys were unbelievable. And Nick was, his personality though, and his calmness and his demeanor kind of took an identity for our team. We never really panicked ever.
Yeah.
And that part of that was from experience of playing lots of playoff games. But no playoff series is easy. Everybody thinks they are, but they're not. And he just never panicked ever. It was just the same thing over and over and over and over. And I remember when Pittsburgh beat us in the last play of the game and Fleury made that save. He just went in there. His heart rate's he's probably cooking at about 42 on his heart rate monitor. Just calm as can be. I'm still convinced if I give him that 10 times, he scores 8 out of 10, puts it up top.
Yeah.
But only he would have that no panic level to kind of coast in there. Not coast, but kind of like just surf in there and get that scoring chance with 10 seconds left. Not even 1 set, but there's 10 seconds on the clock. But I know it didn't work out for him, but that's the kind of player he was. He's always making something out of nothing. And to me, and there's been a lot of great defensemen, but at that time he was the best. And had the nicest stall ever. His stall was the most immaculate stall I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, everything was hanging in the right spot all the time. Now, I don't know if the trainers did that for him. He tipped them big.
Yeah.
But his stuff was always in perfect condition, and they always looked the same. He probably looks great nowadays, too. He's one of those guys that he's like Brady he's going to look good forever, and the rest of us are starting to, metabolism, like we talked about before, is starting to not work. Well, he's probably still working perfect.
You know what? I have a friend of mine that actually just sent his blood to Europe because he wants to be ageless like Nick Lidstrom.
I heard about this. We should get that guy on this show.
He's a real beauty. His name's Nick Papagiorgio.
Yeah.
Yeah. He sent his blood to Europe. Yeah. He's afraid of getting old. On the ice, between whistles, or in that meticulous stall in the locker room, best dry sense of humor moment with Nick.
Oh, he had lots.
Well, give me a couple.
Well, a couple bad goals would go, and he'd go, ooh, that one wasn't that good, was it? No, Nick, it wasn't very good. He started laughing, and he'd come back, start laughing sometimes, and I'd be playing the puck up on the power play too much, and he'd come back giggling, he goes, Scotty told me to tell you to not pass the puck anymore up the ice and give it to the defense, but you can do whatever you want. And then he started laughing and skated away. Which, Nick, no, I can't do whatever I want. You can do whatever you want. I can't do whatever I want. And just stuff like, but I think for him, and it was always like, you can't win with a European captain, which is ridiculous, right? Yeah. That's just another thing people latch on to. He was unreal in 08. He always was, but just as he aged, it was really never about his goals and his assists, and it was just about playing on a really good team. And he ran the power play better than anybody else I've ever seen. And just his sense of humor, he's always laughing like other guys. Thought it was hilarious, but he was an easy guy to get along with, a quiet guy, a subdued guy, hard to get into his world.
Yeah.
One of those guys.
Yeah.
But nicest guy you'll meet, for sure.
Hardest guy, because I'm thinking, of the guys we've talked about. Henrik Zetterberg.
Oh, he's
Pavel Datsyuk, who
most interesting man in the world.
Who, Zetterberg?
Zetterberg. Oh,
he could bring back the Dos Equis commercials.
We went on a golf trip he's the best. He's the best. I talk to guys that I know that are just friends of mine that are running into him, tell me how awesome he is. I remember we were in Scotland, Ireland golfing, and he was there, and each of us brought our own buddies there. So I had some guys that he didn't know. He took care of them better than he took care of me. I'm like, this is not right, Hank. I've saved you a ton of times, whether you want to believe it or not. He just, running back stuff to the next groups because Cronwell got a hole in one. We ran out of gas, we'll say. Running back stuff to us. But he'd do anything for anybody, Hank. And I'm sure Larkin will tell you. Lark's is lucky to have those guys around at the start of his career because Hank, to me, is probably we talk about Eiserman, but one of the best pros I've ever played with, by far and away.
As good of a close
as
we've had to a Digging In episode. Lark said that his rookie year, like he had a scoring chance, didn't score. They got back to the bench, and the Dos Equis most interesting man in the world, Hank, said to him, Lark, you got to wrap your arms around this. We're going to play 19 or 20 minutes tonight.
Yeah.
And we got to play exactly the same way for 19 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever Lark said. He said there's going to be another 10, 20, 30 seconds where we're going to get a chance to score and be the difference in the game. That's the way you have to approach it. And Larks, he said, first he's like, oh, this is boring. But then he said, what a piece of advice.
Yeah, because a lot of times nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you have to not live with it. You got to embrace it and enjoy it.
And feel that it's interesting.
Feel that it's
the
interesting.
most interesting man in the world.
And just do it and just bring it as what comes to you. And I mean, I think Zetterberg killing off that 5-on-3 against Pittsburgh, he was a beast. And he loved playing against Crosby. He drove Crosby nuts. And you think of when we beat them and the centers that lined up, I mean, we had Datsyuk and Zetterberg. And the next year, if Datsyuk when he got hurt, we would have been, to my estimation, a lot. We probably would have won. But he loved playing against Crosby. That was Zetterberg loved shutting Crosby down. That was one of his favorite things to do. And he was unbelievable on that 5-on-3 and really won the Conn Smythe because of that. Yeah. I mean, he was ridiculous. I remember he went back door. I think it was Malkin by himself. And I'm like, this is in. And there's Zetterberg came out of nowhere and grabbed it. As a forward, down low on a PK is unreal.
Yeah. Well, that's
just
rotation.
Determination. Yeah.
That's rotation.
That's
too.
rotation.
Datsyuk, a game I did between the benches in Raleigh, I'll never forget because he sat, whether it was at the end of the bench or right near where I was or on a stool, and just the things that he would do between shifts, maximum recovery.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, the magical things on the ice. I've always heard, I've never gotten to know him, another dry sense of humor guy.
Yeah.
Tell me about
He'd
Pavel.
laugh all the time. If somebody was -4 in the game, he'd be laughing at them on the bus.
He would?
Yeah. He says, that wasn't a good one, was it? No, it wasn't a good one. And he'd be laughing at me if I let in some bad ones. And he always wanted to do different stuff. So he's like, I've never taken a slap shot before in a game. So he'd come down the wing and take an old school slap shot and start laughing coming off the ice. So, but he was, and a lot of the Russian players, and Sergei was Americanized, Fedorov.
Yeah.
Pav wasn't as much. His English wasn't as good as theirs, but he not from lack of trying, but his personality was beyond. He loved telling jokes. A lot of them weren't that great, but he loved the jokes, and he loved laughing. And he's one of those guys. And you look at his game, you think, whoa! And you see him, you think how serious he is, but that wasn't the case. Yeah. He was just having fun, and that's why he went back. I think I'm not guessing. I'm giving you my opinion. Is that it just became not as much fun for him? Yeah. So he went back to Russia and played for his hometown. But his main thing was, if I'm having fun, I'm going to keep playing. Yeah. And when it stopped being fun for him, and he was a fun guy, from off the ice to playing to everything he did. Well, you could see it. I don't think he ever did the same thing on a penalty shot or a shootout. Yeah. And I don't even think it mattered to him. He was just playing. Yeah. Like he had some unbelievable goals. Murray Turco can attest to that. But Asterio Pav he had ultimate respect for the older players on the team. 2 stories left. One was Chris Pronger. We were playing against Detroit, and I was in St. Louis. And Pronger coming out. Pronger, one of the most competitive guys, meanest players I've ever played with. Who is this effing number 13? Who is this? Because back then, that was 2002. They're on the 4th line with Luke Robitaille, Henrik Zetterberg, Pavel Datsyuk, and Luke. Think of that. It's insane. Their 4th line is all going to be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. And I go, well, he's pretty good, Prongs. You go over there and you tell them between periods that I'm going to kill him if he ever does that to me again. Well, Pav was making him look bad. Yeah. I'm like, oh, now, Brett Hall had a hat trick that game in St. Louis against us, so the crowd was actually cheering against us too, in our home rink. Well, Pav split the D with Prongs again. Prongs two-handed, broke his stick over him. Pav scores. He looks at me like it's my fault. I'm like, Prongs. I said, I told you who he was. You're not listening to me. Prongs was so mad because we didn't know who they were. You know, the younger, like it's like when Patrick Kane first came into Chicago. You know who he is, but you don't know who he can be. And that was our first introduction to Pavel Datsyuk. And then we're in training camp, and you have the scrimmages, and the only guy that can look bad when you first haven't played for a while is the goalies, right? And you're like holding on for dear life, right? Like you're clock watching, and the clock's barely moving. You're like, Like when they go from stop time from running time, that's like your worst day of your life at training camp, because now you're in there the whole time. You got to actually play all the minutes before you're covering everything. So Pavel dekes me. He has a wide open net. He can score if he wants, passes it away, and he goes, "You're welcome, Ozzie." Because I already let him like 4. It was getting bad. Like I was leaking oil that morning in Traverse City. I'm out. Like I'm at the hash marks looking at the ceiling. Passes it back to the point skates by me. "You're welcome, Ozzie." But that's the kind of guy he was, right? He's always aware of what's going on. He's a very respectful guy, very funny guy, and wow, what a player when he played. Unbelievable.
You just hit that one out of the ballpark, Oz. What about at any point, before the tragedy or after the tragedy, what do you think of when you think of Vladimir Konstantinov?
Well, they drafted him as like a forward, and he came on D. And you think about the Russian 5, he was always like, well, I mean, Kozlov or him, Larionov.
Yeah.
He was always, I don't want to, not an afterthought, but just, well, and then there's this Konstantinov guy. Well, he could play either forward. Like we had 2, think of this, in the NHL, we had 2 guys that could play forward or D and be really good at both of them. And we used to have, if we had a penalty shot, or Vladdy would take it. He was unbelievable. You couldn't stop him on it. Like as a goalie, you know the guys that are good. He was unbelievable. And just his pure strength, like, and he was a lanky guy, but his strong. And all the Russians were strong because they've been training way before we ever trained here. We were way behind in that. And once again, a huge personality, like a funny guy, and always laughing, but ultra intense. Not a dirty player. Like you think of guys that were dirty in the 80s and 90s, and just a hard guy to play against. And like I think of that hit on Howard Chuck, God bless him as well. He skated around, but that happened all the time. Yeah. That just happened to be, not every game was on TV back then. He would crush guys and he'd add the offense. He had a complete game. Not only that, is he was in shape like a triathlete. Yeah. We'd go to the parking lot beside the Joe and it'd be Sizzling and John Warren go, "You got to run 1.5 miles." Well, he'd finish in like under 6 minutes, and here comes the goalies, me and Chevy coming around the cones again. Lap it up. It's like we're getting lapped. I remember Chevy goes, "Is there any pits we can go into here?" Like we're trying to break 9. Vladdy's in there almost under 6. Yeah. I remember him and Ray Shepard and those unbelievable runners. But Vladdy was, everything he did was at a high level. I think taught that in when he grew up. I mean, hands down, he would have been a Hall of Famer for sure. Yeah. I mean, that career was cut way too short, obviously, and disappointing in the way that it happened, because he was a huge part of our team, and the guys we lost along the way that could have still been on our team are incredible. Yeah. And that doesn't take away from any of the guys we got, because they played great as well when they came in. But Vladdy was a unique player. And I think that's another thing I talk about, those teams, really good teams, played for each other, but had a ton of unique guys. Yeah. There wasn't like 2 identical guys ever. There was always these different guys that fit in, like putting together a puzzle, and it just worked. And it worked because we had great leadership.
Again, referencing back to, one of your Stanley Cups, and both Scotty and George McPhee, I think they would say the 2 best players arguably for Detroit in '98 were Chris Osgood, and that Sergei Fedorov was playing as well as he's ever played.
He was phenomenal in that series. Remember, he had that outside in move, and he shoot it on his forehand go through the knees between his stick and his skates, and then shoot it glove side high, just a rocket. But Sergei, another guy, played both. He played D, went back there and was unbelievable. Then he'd go up and forward. He was a dynamic player, strong too. He was more, and he had him and Stevie. Sergei was more in and out. But when he was on, there was nobody better. I mean, he's an MVP. And he just sometimes didn't have that consistency that everybody wanted, because you saw this superstar player and everybody expected him to be that every night. But he wasn't that type of guy. He was a really nice, kind guy, do anything for anybody. And he fit into what we were doing. Yeah. And you think, well, was he a superstar? Do I think his number should be retired in Detroit? Yeah, I do. I think it should hang up. Detroit's tough to get your number up there. I tell people that, though. You look up there, there's not a lot for how long the team's been around. It's not like when you go to Arizona and Brett Hall's numbers up there in wing. This is different. There's different standards. It's very difficult. But do I think it should be up? Probably. I do. For what Sergei did here. Didn't leave on the best note, but things happen. But Sergei was the one guy that could, we had some of them, but could take games over. Yeah. And to say you can dominate an NHL game and dictate it, I can't say that about a lot of guys.
Did you talk about Lidstrom and Datsyuk, Lidstrom on the ice? You know, did Fedorov or Stevie take a twirl between whistles or a D-zone face-off and have anything good to say, or were they pretty focused?
Sergei's real focused in the games. Stevie ultra focused too. He didn't. These guys were ultra competitors. When the game was on, it was all in. Yeah. Didn't say a lot. The guys that talked a lot were the Koshers and the Drapers and the Malpys and all the guys like that came through. Those guys played, and those guys, other players, were a great compliment to those superstars that we had.
Ozzie, quick tangent, because we're going to have to, if you're willing, we're going to have to do this with some regularity, because I could go on for eons. It might actually help speed up my metabolism and get my waistline. At
least we're not eating. If the longer we sit here, the less we're eating. I can drink some more water.
Yeah, we're not doing what you did with the cup in 2008 or what I did through my 20s and 30s.
My problem is now I'm traveling around with my son, coaching his 9U hockey team. You go to these tournaments, where are you going to eat after? Sonic Burger, and Burger King, McDonald's. You ever had a McDonald's double cheeseburger when you're starving?
Yeah,
don't. Well, I'm not saying it's not good. That's why I'm saying it. But I got to get myself together. It's time to start getting in shape again.
Hey, listen, I'm not Zoolander, but I think you're doing just fine.
Put it this way. There's going to have to be adjustments to the suits here when we come back.
Oh, yeah, well, I did a recent Digging In episode with my cousin who just became CEO
You threw the
of Ford.
jacket on?
No, I split my pants. I went to lean down. I gave him a cake to congratulate him for being CEO of Ford.
Yeah.
And he's my mom's nephew, so my mom came, and when we went back to the car, she was freezing. So I just wanted to jam the heat for her.
Yeah.
So I put down the cake.
You split the pants.
And these used to be my loose pants, and I split the pants.
Well, there's always things that put you on notice.
Yeah, and I may or may not have been in a situation, Ozzie. You remember one of Schwarzenegger's movies and what it was called?
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't want to...
Commando.
I know that's a put on notice thing for you.
That's a big time
for sure. It is. I mean, I had one of those the other day. I was tying skates up in the dressing room, and the waistband's working overtime, and it's like I was doing the plumbing. I'm like, that's the first time ever. I got to buckle down.
We're gonna do it
because
together.
now things are the pants are having to work a lot more than they used to have to. That waistband.
No question.
Oh, or if you're driving, put the seatbelt on. That's another. That's that's a put you on notice moment as well.
There's nothing worse than being hungry with tight pants.
No. You got to know. Well, it's hard too, because you know every rink we go to, they got these huge meals. Now you've eaten, and when you're on the road, we're spoiled. You eat in the morning, then you eat again, then you eat at the game, then you get on the plane, and then all this food comes again.
Yeah.
So you're eating like probably 2 times too much.
Yep.
So there's got to be a pattern of it. It's a good thing we've been off for a while. You can put yourself on notice, and we can have a competition maybe, and so you can get in the best shape.
We'll do it together. I wore this, and I'm going to get one for you. This new Pucky, after the Whalers mascot, Trucker, for a couple reasons. What a goal you scored in Hartford, and I want you to tell me about it, because I have to tell you, right down the road, and we're actually here at the Rolston Hockey Academy, and this is where I play juniors. Yeah. I worked so hard to be a good puck handler, and it just never came. So what did you do? Because you were elite, and what do you remember about that goal? I'm wearing the Pucky for you.
Well, for starters, I was given a chance. In junior, my coach wanted me to play it. Even before then, I remember, because in Medicine, the midget team was kind of the farm team of the junior team, Medicine Tigers. So I was told to do it. And for bad or for worse, I mean, I was cut out lots, and there's a lot of times when it didn't work. But I did it from a young age, and I was allowed to, which a lot of times your coaches stay in the net, stay in the net. Well, I was allowed to roam around and try and make plays, and that was the biggest thing. And really back then you didn't train. I played a ton of street hockey, played out, and worked my hands and shot a lot of pucks and did a lot of things in my basement. My dad was a principal, so we got to use the gym after school and go in there and play street floor hockey all the time. And I'd just shoot pucks and shoot balls against the wall. And but that goal, and I get to NHL, and that was one of the things they wanted me to keep doing. Now it changed because of the speed of the game, so I had to dial it back a bit and really figure out what was going to make me successful in doing that. But I remember that game in Hartford, I told Drapes I was going to score, and Drapes wasn't playing. And there's no replays back then. The score clocks were, you could barely see them, what was on them.
Yeah.
Drapes was in the press box. He walked down. I scored while he was walking the stairs or the elevator, whatever is in the mall there in Hartford.
Yeah.
And I remember Glenn Wesley dumped it in. I put my stick on the ice, almost hit Nick Lidstrom in the head. And I really didn't look when I shot it. I just knew I had a ton of time because he dumped it into my left side, so my forehand side. The other side would have been more difficult. So it was kind of in the wheelhouse. It's like, when you're teeing off on a golf course and you're playing that hole that's about 200 yards wide. You're just in the wheelhouse. You just hammer it. So I just tried to shoot as hard as I could. And it happened to have the right English on it, a little bit of a fade.
Yeah.
A little bit of fade and right in the middle of the net. So that was a cool moment. And you talk about our team, like sometimes guys are, who cares? But, Eisman was fired up. Vladdy was fired up. These are guys that they really, what's the big deal to them, right? But they're excited. So guys on our team, too, generally always excited for guys when they accomplish something, which was a really cool thing. So I have that picture. It's like Stevie's around me, Nick's around me, Vladdy's around me. I'm like, that's the pictures I think are cool. It's just by chance that happened. But those are like, to me, Vladdy's a Hall of Famer. So those are all Hall of Famers again around me. So it's real. And it happens to be I scored playing Swift Current Broncos, and Jeff Sanderson, whose son just got drafted, played with the Broncos when I scored against him with the Broncos. He was on the ice. Then he was on the ice in Hartford. He comes up to me after. He goes, "Are you kidding me? I was on the ice for both of your goals."
Yeah, he was on the team during my only. No, he was in training camp. I think he had been traded when I.
He
got
was
called
good
up.
in Hartford.
Oh, he really
fabulous. He could skate.
Yeah,
score. He had
finisher.
The shot. Finisher.
Yep. Lidstrom, did he say anything that the fact that you almost hit his dome when that puck departed your stick?
I never knew. He never said anything because that's like him. He's never going to say anything. And then I saw the replay. Then you couldn't see the replay because unless, because you have the video guy in there and Scotty would wheel back the VHS, but he never showed it. Until years later. And I seen him duck.
Yeah.
And it was going to hit him right in the forehead.
Yeah.
And I go, "Nick, I didn't realize I almost missed you." He goes, "Yeah, it almost took my head off. You don't know that?" I said, "I never knew until like just recently."
Yeah.
And this would have been 5 or 6 years ago.
You mentioned the picture.
Yeah.
With Steve, Nick, and Vladimir would have been a Hall of Famer. And I'm separating our friendship. Okay? I see this objectively. And I only got to back up one game in the league, but I've been broadcasting for 22 years. So I look at what you accomplished. Over 400 wins. Slam dunk it would have been. You would have won the Conn Smythe in 2009. Slam dunk. So it would have been 3 cups as a starter. You won another one in 97 with your roommate, Mike Vernon. I've got you in the Hall of Fame right now. I'm not going to put you on the spot, partner, but I do want to ask you, have you allowed yourself to think about it, and what would it mean?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, for how many years have I been? 5 or 6 years for sure, yeah. You wouldn't be. Of course you think about it. That's a very, very cool thing, a huge honor. And I think not only me, but the other guys that aren't in there. I mean, it seems like it's hard for goalies to get in there for some reason or other, unless you're like a Marty Berger or Patrick Waugh, or unless you're really, really elite like Dominic Hasek was. There's really not the same criteria for players because there's also superstars and then there's guys that weren't quite at that level that are in there as well that deservingly so belong in there. But I think of guys like Mike Vernon won twice. You want to Conn Smythe, we just mentioned. I Tom Barrasso. There's lots of guys that were very good goalies. I think Curtis Joseph, for instance, he had a great career, won a ton of games. And there's lots of guys coming. I think of Henrik Lundqvist and guys like that. It's difficult for goalies. Maybe they need you and I on the committee. I could vote myself in, maybe. But it's hard. I mean, but I'm not sure. Hopefully one day it happens. Didn't Rogie Vachon go in like a while ago?
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah, I thought that was awesome. Grew up watching him play and loved talking to him. It's always great when you get to talk to an older goalie.
Yeah.
So maybe one day. I just hope it's not too old where I can't wheel up there or remember what I'm talking about, because I did wear that old helmet for quite a while and took some headshots. So things are starting to slip a bit.
Well, and especially now that you're revealing that tightening pants are a real issue. I mean, you might look like
I'm going to have to come from the backstage, no stairs allowed.
look like the refrigerator Perry by the time you roll in.
There's going to be a readjustment. We're going to dig in with that too here.
And those are all great names. And I really fortunate to have Tommy Barrasso in Carolina. Never forget Ray Whitney, because Tommy Barrasso would wear his pants almost up to the bottom of his chest. Mm-hmm. I think that's technically, you talk to a tailor. If you were to talk to Giorgio Armani, I think maybe right about as high as you should wear them.
Yes.
Whit would say, Whit, a Westerner like you, Whit would say he's the only guy I've ever known that has to reach over his shoulder to grab his wallet. But
that's outstanding.
So, but, Tommy B, 2 cups. Those other guys, and I don't think that this should be a defining thing, but my argument for you that makes it absolute and unanimous is you're a winner. And I think your story comes into play too, because there are so many different points where you were at a fork in the road. And this is what defines digging in.
Yeah.
And you could have said, you know what? I'm not going Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. I'm not going this way again.
Yeah.
I got knocked down. I'm going to go the wrong way. But it was, because it was too damn hard.
Yeah.
And every time you responded, right up until the end in 2009.
Well, when was the luck? It was 2004, right? And they kind of changed the rules. And I was changing my game. I was working with some goalie coaches here. I also worked with Jim Bedard, who was in Dallas now. And I remember I was changing my game. I'm in practice doing this the whole lockout, and I came back. But it wasn't translating to my game. I was still diving around. I was the old school. I wasn't pushing and staying upright and on my knees. And so I was keeping, I was struggling. I don't want to say Babcock was all over me, but he's hard on me, right? I remember I was on the bench one day and I was like, that's it, I'm done. Can't do this. The rules are changing, right? They're calling everything now. You can't touch anybody. That's kind of when they first came in. I was getting shelled. Like, I was demoralized because I put in all this work for a year and I wasn't seeing it translate right away. Not even close. So I'm like, I remember Paul McLean, of all people, doing goalie drills with me on the ice. He'll laugh about this. I'm pushing around from side to side on my knees. But that was another point where I was sitting on the bench. I remember I was like, and I was seriously, when you have those moments, you're thinking, should I even be doing this? Like, I was looking around the Joe and I was looking at the banners. I was looking at the banners, looking around and like, maybe this is it. Like, maybe I'm done. And I had a choice. And then I'm like, well, then am I going to keep at it and keep battling, or am I going to give up? And I honestly had that conversation with myself. And I'm like, and I decided right there, I'm like, not a chance. I'm going to keep battling, keep it up. And I went back in. Oh yeah, more goals flew in, but I was like in between, right? So it took me like a year and a half to get to where I was actually just doing it on the ice. It was a long time, frustrating. But that was the one point, was the crossroads, the main one.
See, this is the definition of what this show is all about. Because anybody can get through the good times, and the mind is perhaps the most interesting thing.
And I think that moment taught me how to practice.
Yeah.
And to enjoy practice. Because as a goalie, sometimes, I'm getting frozen puck shot, and my hands are killing me. I don't want to hit my stick because I'm cold. Then I was like, I enjoyed the process of trying to get better for that half hour after practice, staying out late, or going out for 15 minutes before and doing edge works. And from that point on, I remember with Jim Bedard, I'm like, okay, I got to get my feet better. I got to keep my feet faster. I'm getting older. I got to do power skating every day. So we skated for 15 minutes early before every practice. And then after practice, we'd work on pushing around, making myself square. So that was the start of just doing stuff every day to try and last as long as I could. And then I was determined to play until he told me I couldn't anymore.
Ozzie, I am going to, as soon as we finish, and I request that you come on again probably next week.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you right now, because we're doing the Michigan tour right now.
Yeah.
And Larks, as we mentioned a bit ago, his last answer may have been the best, talking about the most interesting man in the world, and doing things over and over again the right way and finding that interesting. Our dear friend, Hall of Fame broadcaster Mickey Redmond.
Does he ever?
He ended with a bang. So
I can't compete with that.
Well,
whoa.
yes,
Mickey Redmond, that's like...
I believe you can. So I ask you.
Yes.
Here in this period of transition with a bright future.
Yeah.
For as historic of an organization as there is, not only in hockey, but I mean in sports, what it means. How do you define culture and what makes it so special here in Detroit, and what needs to make sure is always there with that all-important word right now and as a new chapter begins?
Well, for starters, it's something you never want to lose because it's hard to get back and it's hard to find. Starts with leadership, culture does. Starts with the owners, works its way down to guys in the coaching staff, even assistant coaches, Brad McCrimmon, guys like that were here. Dave Lewis, character guy. A lot of guys that, like we spoke about, are there when times are tough. That's culture. It's not when you're winning games and you're on a huge winning streak and you win. We won 64 games in a year, but we lost in the playoffs. And it's who's around when you get beat by Colorado. It's who's around when you have those brawls against Colorado. It's who's in the room when you need them most. Pat somebody on the back after a tough loss. I mean, it's hard to win. People think it's easy. It's very difficult. You lose more than you win, a lot more, and it's the tough times that make your teams better. And culture is the teams that can embrace, admit, and get better from their failures. And from you don't want to call them failures, experiences. We can call them that. And from when things don't go good, who's going to step up and who's going to come together and who's going to be better. It's easy to be a pessimist when things are going wrong, things are going bad, and that guy that badmouths somebody or that guy that leaves the room and talks bad about somebody. Culture is having guys that don't do that. And that comes from the top, and real fortunate to have some outstanding coaches in Detroit and have some great leadership guys that taught us that. I think Detroit always had guys that when we were there, and that's one of the reasons why I always had all those goalies that we aforementioned play with me, is Yzerman was there for the younger guys. Fetisov, Leonov were there for Fedorov and Kozlov. And Zetterberg and Datsyuk were there for Larkin and Bertuzzi, a little bit of Mantha. So these guys, you always got to learn from somebody that's handing the baton off of culture. That's what it is, really. It's handing that culture off to the next guys and trusting them to do it the right way. There's a big responsibility in that, and felt that when I was there for the younger goalies I had with Jimmy Howard. I had to mentor him, and he had his ups and downs, but I felt my responsibility was to give him that to move forward and do it himself. And he did a great job of it, and did very well the last few years, and especially last year, a trying year for him. Kept his head on his shoulders, and that's part of their culture too, is not making it about yourself when things are tough. And Red Wings have always been that, and it's been difficult for them since Zetterberg's been retired. And people can talk about Larkin and all these guys are great kids. It takes time, but they get the culture. And Jeff Blashill's done a wonderful job as well. He's a great human too. We run into a lot of them, but culture is just doing it the right way every day, every minute, every game, every practice, and being there for your teammates. Not when times are easy, but when times are tough.
Okay. Grand Slam. And as I thank you.
Does that beat one Mickey Redmond? That's a pressure question for you. You don't have to. I can't be above Mickey yet. That's a close second.
No, actually, I'm going to have to, on this one, going through the Detroit tour, that was all world. You know what?
That's
and
Mickey
people
right
are already
there.
calling in.
That's Mickey.
They're all calling in. You know what? Because the two things, because everybody, it's such an overused word, in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Culture. And I've never thought about it, and I will from here on in, thanks to Oz, like it's a relay race in the Olympics and passing the baton. I've never had that visual. Okay? Outstanding. Yeah. And then as I truly say thank you, my dear friend, and just until I see you the next time.
Thanks for having me. Anytime. Love this.
Boy, that was great, wasn't it? I decided to switch up locations from the intro where Ozzie always shut the door to this is a spot in the driveway where I can't tell you how many hours I logged out here, my goalie gloves on, piece of plexiglass, trying to fire pucks well above that wall you see behind me here on YouTube. and really above those trees and and those leaves above. And I never could do it. Never could do it. And Ozzie had no problem doing it. Of course, we talked about when that all came to fruition, scoring a goal in Hartford, nearly hitting Nick Lidstrom in the head. That would have been something on that eventual goal for Ozzie. I tried. I just couldn't get there right in this very spot. So Ozzie, thank you so much for bringing us behind your Wizard of Oz curtain. Tremendous. I hope, and I certainly think you deserve to punch your ticket in the Hockey Hall of Fame. To Brian Rolston for hosting us, and his hockey academy brings back so many great memories because the majority of my youth years and my junior years were spent with him as a teammate. I remember one practice in particular at the rink that we just shot at his hockey academy, where I forgot my cup to practice one day, and I was scared to death of the coach. Heck of a good guy and a great coach. Andy Wiedenbach was his name, and I forgot my cup. And we had not just Brian Rolston, but Eric Lindros on the team, two guys who could howitzer it. Thank God I got through that practice intact, thankfully. That would have been something. Brian Rolston, what a player, now passing it on to future junior standouts, collegiate standouts, U.S. hockey standouts at all levels, and future NHL stars. So take a look at the Rolston Hockey Academy. And thank you to our presenting sponsor, Allstate Fastener. They do it all. I mean, gosh, if I were selling for them, I would certainly mention they have global reach and global sourcing. They know where to get any type of fastener, nut, bolt, rivet, screw. Where do you get it? Best quality, at the best price. I should mention, I'm very proud of this, that well over 50% of their products are made in North America and in the United States of America. So very proud of that. Vendor managed inventory. They'll bring it right to your line. One of the owners of the company, Nick Giorgio's his name. He once said, nuts and bolts aren't sexy, but everybody uses them and uses a lot of them. And Allstate is the place to go anytime you have that need. Digintrip.com, right down the road here, the Pope Francis Center, just a couple weeks left before New Year's. 50% of our sales at this time of year, and especially under these circumstances, these are the people that need our help the most. So please keep that in mind when you peruse our website. Hopefully you like our merch. We've just expanded our winter line with winter hats and toques and such. And until the next time, because I'm getting cold out here, although of course I have thick skin and I'm tough. It's really a prerequisite to dig in, so I could probably sit here and talk in a Speedo until July. That's just the way I'm built. That's in my DNA, but I might as well bid you adieu until the next time, hoping that when you look in the mirror, you know you're digging in, and stay safe, stay healthy. Please rate and review our show on all audio and video platforms. Until then, we will talk to you soon from Digging.
We're digging in with Trip today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today.